Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar on building a successful career in software development. Thank you all for joining. I'm Shivani and I'm your host for today. I would like you all to introduce to our presenter, Mitul Bid, founder and CEO at Coditas. Mitul is an IIT Bombay graduate with over 16 years of experience in the software development industry. His passion for clean code has led Coditas to surge from a team of 2 to 400 in just 6 years. Besides his philosophy of building data driven solutions, he is passionate about changing the perception of Indian coders globally. Now, a little reminder before we get started. In case you have any questions during the presentation, please put them in the chat box to the right hand side of your YouTube panel. We will be taking them up at the end of the session. Here, Mitul, the virtual stage is all yours.
Thank you very much, Shivani, for the warm welcome and also organizing this webinar for the benefit of everyone. Great. Shivani, just can you confirm if you can see my screen?
Yes, Mitul, we can see your screen.
Okay, great. Thanks. Welcome, everyone. I'm very happy to be talking about this subject today. It's one which is very close to my heart and which I believe is very important for all of you who are about to start your career or are currently in the software development career. One thing I'd like to tell everyone upfront is that congratulations if you've chosen this career path. I have been in this career for the last 16, 17 years, and I cannot think of a better career. It is one of the best. Of course, I'm biased, but that's the whole point, right? That it is one of the best options in the career industry in the industry today from multiple perspectives, right? You can be sitting in, say, Goa, writing code for a company in Japan and having users in Africa, right? Very, very few career options will have that kind of an impact. That too with very, very minimal resources. All you typically would need is a good laptop and internet. So, and over here, this is one of the very few careers where you decide your path, your merit, your strengths will determine how far you go. And that's why it's very important for you to be knowing some of these things more clearly than anyone. Now, before I get into the actual discussion around software development and career, I wanted to give everyone a couple of pointers which are generally applicable for life in general and as well as for this webinar. So the first thing which I wanted to tell you is that career choices and career paths is not an inexact science. For everyone, there'll be a different background, circumstances, choices, preferences, strengths. And when I give my perspective, it is based on what I am aware about, what is my knowledge, what is my circumstance. So there is absolutely no right or wrong in the advising around this. It is, so whatever you hear from me, please make sure you take it in context, because a lot of the points will be subjective and will be based on my background, my context, and what information and knowledge I had. A lot of it worked for me. A lot of it will work for you. Some of it may not, right? So, and this is in general applicable for most choices in the in the world. Get to know that there's no black and white, or it's not a Boolean choice over here. So, very first point, I want to make sure that whenever I'm talking, please put it in your context, put your preferences, put yourself, and look at. Second thing which I want to tell everyone about is that it's very, very, very important for you to read more about the career ahead. You've spent the last 16 years of your life preparing yourself for a career. Now read up more about the actual career in terms of what was going to happen, what are the options, it doesn't harm at all to just do a little bit more study around it, because it's very, very different from your theoretical understanding. So read a lot about the choices that you want to have, and talk to a lot of people like me or others who you know are in the field, in the domain, in the area that you want. It is not going to hurt, and it is definitely one strong advice, not just for this but in general for everyone. And lastly, before I actually get into more depth on the webinar, when you're talking to someone, try to know the background of the person. So it's in line with what I just said earlier. Everyone will give you advice and knowledge and information based on their understanding, their background, their choices, their circumstances. So it's very important that if you're talking to someone, you know whom you're talking to and what their journey has been and what they were through. So, if you can make comparisons. So I will want to give you an in-depth about me first, so that whatever I talk later, you know why I said that. You will know why I chose a particular technology or why I have a preference for a particular line of thought. Uh, and that is because of the background I have been. That doesn't mean that there is no other world, or what, which is totally opposite of what I'm saying is not right. But this is my background. So coming to me, about me, right? Okay, a very brief about my personal background. So I was born and brought up in Kenya, which is in Africa. I did my schooling up to 12th over there. So as a corollary, I cannot advise a lot of you about the Indian education system, although I have kids who are now studying, so I have knowledge from them about how the Indian education system is. Uh, but to enhance, I came to India for IIT. I joined computer science BTech in the year 2000. I graduated in 2004. And then I began my formal career in software development. And this is how my career looked like. Okay, and so my first job was with Gemstone Systems. I was a software developer there, and it couldn't have been a better start to my career. I was a systems programmer doing core Java development, backend systems. It was an in-memory distributed cache. This is 17 years ago, right? This is, at that time, it was cutting bleeding edge, right? And we used to operate in a field where a millisecond save could result in hundreds of millions or tens of millions of dollars of profit. Okay, we were in the high performance computing world. A lot of our product, the middleware we were selling, was being sold to Wall Street, and people who could calculate something faster were at an advantage. So we were very, very sensitive to performance. Those days, the machines were relatively lesser powered than today. The memories were lesser powered. So we had to do very, very efficient programming. And as I said, I couldn't have got a better option to start my career. I can't think of anything based on my context. So an excellent start to my career with in core Java development, with excellent mentors, excellent product, and great domain. I always had an inkling towards starting something on my own. So within the same company, I tried to move towards the business development team, where I was in the pre-sales team as still as a technical person. So I was the technical part in the pre-sales team. A lot of you might not understand what I said if you're starting your career, but that's okay. It's not very important today. I was there for a year and a half. Then I moved on to a company called RiseSmart, and I was there for a year. But that year was transformational for me because I moved from core systems programming, backend development to web development. Over in RiseSmart, I got to experience front end. I got to experience various technologies, including PHP and writing HTML, CSS, and so it was 1 year was very important for me because I moved from core backend programming to front end and programming, and as in I did front end programming as well, and that was a very good experience to getting a perspective. And I'll talk about this as we go forward. From there, I moved into a services company called Omniscient, where I became a partner and I was heading the services division. And over there, I was doing little coding, very little coding, but largely managing software development teams. Now, this was my traditional career path. As I mentioned, that I've always had an inkling, I had an entrepreneurial bug. So I always had a parallel entrepreneurial career. Okay, and So immediately after I graduated, I found a gap in the market whereby second-hand laptops from USA and other countries were very cheap, and in India, second-hand laptops were relatively more expensive. So I got an import-export license. I imported laptops and sold them on Bazi.com, which was later acquired by eBay.com, which a lot of the younger generation will never know about. But a lot of folks otherwise would have known. So eBay, you might still not know eBay, but eBay was the Amazon of those days. And anyway, so that's where I was selling my second-hand laptops. Didn't work out for various reasons, not important for this webinar. I think I'll do a separate webinar later on the right-hand side. But just to give you an idea on the context, the goal right now, what I'm telling you, is for you to understand my background and my knowledge around various things. I then did a restaurant, a Gujarati Thali restaurant. I ran it for 2 years. Then I tried a startup with a batchmate where we were trying to do QR codes based stuff. This was before Android, iOS was there. This was on an operating system called Symbian, and there was something called J2ME. There is still J2ME. So these are mobile platforms which were there before Android and iOS, and we were very, very early in this kind of technology. And later, I also did something around a sofa factory. This kind of gives you a little bit of variety of what I've dabbled into. But one of the reasons for me talking about this slide is that, although I was trying to do this, I personally was not very successful in either. It was not bad, but it was not successful, and I was not very happy doing this. And I found two major things that were missing. One was that all the businesses that I was doing was not something I was an expert at, nor was something I was very passionate about, right? And from a career perspective, I was not focusing on my software development career because I had side businesses running. So that's where my success in my own eyes was lesser. And that's where I decided to address those problems. So I decided to focus on only one thing, and that was a business. I decided to do a business in something I was passionate about, which was clean coding. And third thing, which I was an expert about, which is coding. And that's where I started Coditas. And that's made a huge difference, right? So, and I will be coming to this later and subsequently, but what is Coditas? So the story around Coditas is that in my career as a software developer, I used to travel to various geographies in the world and meet a lot of developers from the world. And there was this knowledge I used to get from them, or this information which I used to get from them, that the software or the code which India produces, if there was a way to, take all the code India writes and put some matrix around it, call it, and judge it. On an average case, it is not of that great quality. And unfortunately, that was true. And that is true today. So this is nothing to take personally as Indians. I'm an Indian, right? But the fact of the matter is that the code which we write on an aggregate average scale is not of that great quality. And the underlying reason is different. I as a software developer, I as a coder felt bad, right? Because this is talking about me. I'm doing something which is not of great quality. And the fundamental reason behind that is that most software houses or businesses in India look at software as purely as a business, and nothing wrong about it. I'm a businessman. I understand that. That's fair. They don't look at it from a doing things right from a coding perspective, clean coding perspective. In fact, as a matter of fact, that if it is done that way, it also makes business sense, which we at Coditas have proven. So, and by the way, I'm not talking about every company. There are lots of companies in India where clean coding is practiced and they're doing really well and there are lots of good. I'm just talking about an average mass scale, and I'm talking about something 7 years ago. So I wanted to change that. So I wanted to build a company which stood for the principles of clean coding, right? So I wanted to create a company which stood for clean coding, and that's where we started Coditas. So Coditas is essentially in the traditional world, you call a services company, which focuses on writing clean code, which makes sure that whatever we do on a daily basis is taking into account the best standard practices, and it's creating something of value which is looking good in the front end or the user perspective, but behind the scenes it's in the most clean optimum way. And as a result, we started as with just two people from a flat 6 years ago, and today we are a team of more than 400 without any investors, without any funding. And the single thing that has worked really, really well for us is clean coding. And that's why I was saying that, it has worked for us. It's proven as a business model. And not only for us, but we have clients who've stuck with us for the last 6 years, 5 years, whenever they started with us. They are seeing value in why clean coding is important. So that's us, and few glimpses about us where it's not just about work, but strong belief around how work is also has to be balanced with life and culture. And the team over here is, for us, is a large family. Okay, now that gives you a background about me, about the company, and about who I am. And that is what I want to take forward into the webinar and more, give you more pointers around how to shape your career and what I can additionally give inputs on. So the very first thing which most people are going to ask, and which most people wonder about, is which is the right technology, right? I, I've done this. I've been talking to lots of students. And this is and the very amongst the very first questions which comes, which is the technology I should go for a successful career. Guess what? You probably know my answer based on my earlier slides. There is no single technology or choice which is right. You will get people who succeeded very well writing C++, you get, or writing Java or JavaScript. It depends on a lot of factors, and I'll give you the factors. I don't want to avoid the question by saying no, there is no right answer. There are answers, there are ways. So you should form a methodology of how to come to an answer based on certain factors. So number one, which I consider, is that do you have a passion? Do you have a preference in the first place? You should rather do what you are passionate about. You should do something you really have a preference about. So in the technology world, it's very, very widely spread, right? In terms of multiple, the actual technologies and the application of the technology, right? And it's not just around the code, around the framework. It's around what part of the code, right? Whether it's a back end, front end, database. It's rare, to be honest, right? I personally never had a passion or preference, and that's another point, right? It's fine not to have a passion or preference because most do not have it. But if you do, it's good to stick to it, or it's advisable to stick to it because it's something you'll do what you like. So, within the technology preference, if there's something you're passionate about, you're good about, you'll do well. You'll definitely do well. Of course, you need to keep in things, other things which I'll talk about. But keep that in mind, that try to go for something you're really passionate about, and have preference about. Another thing, right, within the same thing. So it is not necessarily only about the core technology. It can be around the surrounding of the technology. You might be someone who loves, for lack of a better example, I have photography, and you might want to do something in photography technology, because then you can marry two things. You're marrying your passion, which is not necessarily technology related, but then you're adding technology on top of it. And once you do that, then you will shortlist on kind of technologies which you can work on, which are aligning with your passion preference. This is a point which is difficult to realize when you are at this stage. When at this stage, very honestly, and nothing wrong in it, a lot of people are focused on the numbers, the salary, the location, and that's totally valid. But as you grow, you soon start realizing work satisfaction is important, right? You're going to be spending 1/3 of your life doing this. 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of something else, roughly split, right? More likely more. But do give this a thought. What is your passion and preference? And it is okay not to have one. Passion preference is one, strength weakness is another thing. What are you really good at, right? And again, you may not have discovered that, and that is also fine. But in your career so far, in your education so far, you might have realized you're very good at algos, you're very good at data structures, or you're very good in a particular area of the larger software development umbrella, right? Some people love front end, some people, and these are totally, for example, Now, don't quote me on this, and because I've had arguments on it. I don't think you need very high data structure and algorithms knowledge for front ends, for example. Okay, it will be helpful, useful, no question about it. It's always, but you might have an eye for good user experiences, and you might prefer being a front end developer, right? So over here, that's the two things. Now you're marrying multiple things. You have knowledge about backends and front ends in the first place. Then you know your passion and preference, and you know your strength and weakness. So then the choice is becoming natural on what technology to go for. What is the choice, right? So that you should know your strengths and weaknesses. One thing that you really need to know, that industry is very different from college. Now here's a very personal example. I hated coding when I was in college. So, if you talk to any of my project partners, I'm like, some of you in the webinar today, I'm pretty sure, or your project partner who don't code in a project, right? Project, 4 people in a project, 1, 2, or 3 are coding, or 1, 2 are not. I was the one who did not code because I didn't like coding. That is because the kind of coding you do in college is very different. Okay, it's trying to address usually it's trying to address some abstract, non-real problem, and being done in a timely manner to, again, for lack of a better, whatever, to please your professor or your group. Okay, that's not the right way of doing it. In industry is where I found that I love coding. Right, we were solving real world problems with a real world team, and in a way which was fun. Right, so when it comes to that, coding is fun. Again, this is what I found out, especially if done in the right way, right? So clean coding for me was a revelation. So, when I started my career, I didn't know much about clean coding. Then there was a workshop on clean coding that I did, and that changed stuff for me, right? That's where I realized that I really like coding, because I was doing something which I was happy about. At the end of the day, I wrote code in a clean way. I was happy of my work. I would live the day with having accomplished something at a unit level, at a line level, at a class level, at a function level, at an application level, which I was proud of, right? And there was a lot more fun elements over there, which I discovered in the industry. So some of you, or a lot of you, who think they don't like coding, may not be the case. It may end up being the case later, and you should of course keep that input and change that path or make the choice. But if you don't like coding right now, it does not mean that you'll not like coding in the industry. I know very many examples of the same. So, if there is one thing additionally you want to take away from me, for someone who doesn't like coding in college, coding in industry is different and it can be fun, right? So I was giving general ideas around it, but now assuming you've chosen a technology, or you don't know what technology. So the other thing which I'll tell you about is then you generally, practically speaking, may not have a choice. Okay, because for example, you'll apply to a company like Coditas as a fresher, or Infosys. We cannot predetermine based on the campus placement that we will put you on a Java project or a front end project. You can indicate your preference to some of us, some of the companies, but you may want to do something and the company may not have that option. Right, so in a lot of cases, in a lot of careers have not been, or a lot of technology choices have not been by choice. It has been by circumstance, whereby people have been placed into a technology not of a choice, but because of the circumstance. But guess what? They've been very successful. And now I'll give you some general high level ideas of what is very important. The number one thing, which is a universal truth, which I can mark it as a black and white right, is there is no substitute to you building a strong foundation in tech. You understanding the concepts really well, you knowing the frameworks really well, you knowing the right standard practices really well. And this is usually done in the first few years of your career. After a certain point of time, you'll not being stop being very active in coding, you'll start leading, managing. Those are things you'll encounter. But the first few years of your career, when you are coding or when you are very active, it's very, very important you focus on your own knowledge and building a tech foundation. This is something, there is no counterpart to it, especially if you want to take a tech career path. I don't know if anyone who will not be successful by doing this, right? You will be distracted in the organization sometimes, and I'll come to that point later in the slides. But this is one thing that you should focus on more than anything else. More than anything, your tech foundation in the first few years of your career is immensely important. More important than, again, depends on your context, on your then money, location, anything. Focus on building your concepts and knowledge. And once you have that right, you can move around technologies, around frameworks, right? Because you understand things at a conceptual level. Another thing, as you move, right? Technology is one area where things are not even changing by, by the year, it's changing by the month. So you need to update yourself very, very regularly, right? What was cutting edge 6 months ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago will have changed. You don't necessarily need to be doing that, right? But keep yourself updated, keep on reading, keep on knowing about what is going on. You can, at the minimum, read the reason why something is being introduced, right? The information and knowledge is very high. So I wouldn't recommend you trying to keep a tab on all of it, but something you're interested in, something you're already in, right? That doesn't mean that older texts go outdated. Like even today, you'll get people who will be writing and maintaining systems in COBOL on mainframes. Some of you might not even know these terms today, right? But there's systems which are still being built on tech, which was there 70, in the 1970s, for example, today. But it is being replaced, right? And it is not as popular, right? So it is not advisable to stick to old tech. It's always advisable to, because the number of jobs over there are shrinking. Everyone starting a new project will be usually, most probably, start on the latest tech, which has the advantage. That tech keeps on updating for advantages, for efficiency, right? So there's no sense in sticking to an old tech. The foundation will stay the same, but you still need to update the framework, the knowledge, right? There's a lot of things which change from a fundamental concept perspective as well, right? There are earlier, a lot of front ends were pull based, right? You should send a request to the server to get but then there can be push based notification. There can be push based update to the UI, to the front end, right? Those are fundamental change, right? Push versus pull. I'm just saying. Then there was architectures which were, driven by you. Then there are architectures that were driven by other events, right? So a lot of fundamental changes in design patterns, a lot of things keep on happening, which you at the base level need to constantly update. There's no other solution around it, right? A lot of people out of college, they'll learn one thing, and learning does not stop. In the tech world, learning does not stop. And it is fun. It is fun knowing and keeping yourself. Now, this is one advice I'd like to really, really give to a lot of people over here, because this is something which you may not realize happens unconsciously and you're driven easily. A lot of very good people in tech will join a company uh, where they're good in tech and they're good in communication, they're good in leadership. They may be promoted to a non technical managerial role because that seems like a promotion in that time. And the person at the bottom of their heart love tech, but they see this as a promotion and they move away from tech. I know of so many examples of people who moved away from tech and are regretting it. And guess what? The career paths, this is again another webinar topic, whereby people who moved away from tech and coding actually do not have a very successful career. Not a black and white, not a science. But if you personally like tech, do not easily move away is one thing I would advise on, right? So be in touch and know your goals, know your goals. So if you want to move away from tech consciously, you want to move into a managerial position, you don't want to come back to it, know the circumstances, know the choices, right? Know the salaries. The salaries of non-technical managers as opposed to technical managers is different. Technical managers is far higher, order of magnitude is higher. Okay, I can give you ranges right now, but that will be the point. All I'm saying is that right now in today's world, a CTO is far higher in demand than a CEO. Okay, in the highest in demand uh, in my circle, every second day, I would get 10 people asking me, "Can you refer a CTO?" I would say I'm looking for some myself, right? So tech leadership has reduced in India primarily because a lot of good techies moved away. Okay, and a lot of them are regretting it because they love tech and they didn't want to move away. But the circumstances around the immediate small short-term career path looked like that. This is not a science. I would really advise you to read up on it when you come at this juncture. Talk to people, and if you want to choose not to move away, it might be a good idea, and convey that. If you're a techie, you'll never be out of options for the next 20 years. That's something I'm fairly confident about. And another thing in technology. Now, this is what I see very regularly, is whereby a lot of folks become married to technology and achieving a cult status, thinking that the technology that they are working on is the best and do not even want to look at the options. There are people who've been working on a technology believing it's the best. And then because they've formed a very strong opinion, they're not even considering other evolving technologies, right? I again, I can name a few right away, but that will create the war around which they're constantly. You'll keep on seeing if you are on any of these forums whereby someone will come and say something about technology, and because one person is very passionate about it, although it's a 10-year-old technology, it has not updated itself, but because it had certain things which were right. For example, I can say very easily. Today, one of the most popular languages, most used languages, JavaScript. Okay, and unfortunately, from a technical perspective, it's one of the weaker languages. There are far more superior, structured, rule-based, whatever, right? Languages as frameworks, but they're not doing that well for multiple reasons, and people will argue on it. But you have to finally keep an open mind in various things. Right? What works, right? What is practical in a solution? JavaScript finally will run on a browser, right? You need it on a browser. It's the most platform independent option we have today. Every phone, every device will have a browser which can run JavaScript, right? It is advisable to have, again, I know what I'm talking about can be a webinar topic, can be a discussion topic where people will argue about, where someone will say, no, Ruby on Rails is better, or there'll be, and the point is, they are right in certain areas, they're right about ideas, but then they stick to it and do not want to change their stand based on practical realities. So remember that you love a technology, but keep an open mind to always be open to solutions. So we at Coditas, when a client asks us what is the technology you prefer, we say let us look at the problem statement first. We do not predetermine a technology. We do not say we will use Java over here or we'll use JavaScript. We will say, okay, let's look at the problem, and then of course we will say let's look at the practical challenges around not only the technology but around people. There are certain technologies where there are very less people, the licenses fees are high. Although it might be the right technology, you don't have people who you can hire with the skills, or the license fees is too high. So a lot of things have to be considered, and you as a developer will have to keep that as in mind when you are the unit level in this, right? As a developer, if you have a very hard and fast opinion that no, this is the right way, it's great to have opinions, great to have strong opinions, but it's also good to have an open mind and consider other opinions. So that's one thing around technology, because I'm talking about these things because I've seen this where people have not succeeded. Okay, some instances, and as I said, no right or wrong. It's the point is keeping an open mind. And finally, right, one thing which I think is slightly philosophical, and which I mentioned in the previous part of the webinar, is that you're spending 8 hours of your or one third of your life doing this. Okay. Why do you want to do something you're not happy about? You don't feel good about? Your code is your art, is something we strongly believe in. If you yourself start doing things the right way and with the most efficient way and in a passionate way, you'll be happy. What, again, this is philosophical because ask anyone and very few people will debate what is the goal of life. It's to be happy. Why do you want to be happy after you go home? Why can't you be happy during the process and as a result of it go home satisfied, right? So learn to do things the right way so that you can be proud of your work and get that satisfaction. I am not talking something which is fictitious or which is philosophical. This is something I've experienced. I started loving what I did, and it's brought a change in me, in my overall happiness, in my overall enjoyment of the career. Right? Small point, but very important point. Please make sure you think about that. That whatever you are writing is yours first. Starts from the name of the variable, starts from the class, the function, right? Everything you do it in the right way, and you will be the first person to benefit from it. You should be proud of your work. Your code is your art. Be proud of it. You are an artist. Right? So that largely covers my gyan around technology. I was not giving very hard pointers, but it was trying to get you towards a direction which I strongly believe would lead towards a successful career path. Now, the second question which I get very often asked is which type of company should I join? Which company guarantees? Again, you now know, you should know the answer by now. There is no single answer to it. It always depends on multiple factors. What I will do right now is I'll try to give you a very high level understanding of the types of companies which are there with a very generic classification. And again, no science around it. The boundaries are not that hard. But for you to understand what they are, right? So we can talk about in India largely, say, a product company and a services company, right? The product company is a company which has its own product in the sense it's own intellectual property, and whatever they're building is what they're selling, right? And an example in this would be most of the software you use. Facebook is a product company, or if you want to use a more traditional software company, Microsoft is a traditional product company whereby they have multiple products. Windows is a product, Microsoft Excel is a product, right? And Facebook, the web application, is a product. So a product company is a company which has its own IP and it's selling. This is just a general high level information. I'm pretty sure most of you would have heard it is preferable to go into a product company. I run a services company, so I have different opinions, but I will not necessarily tell you that it's right or wrong, right? What are the advantages of product company? It depends on the company, of course, depends on the product, depends on the technology. But if it aligns with your goals, it might be great, right? So, in a product company, you're working on typically a one or two products, you're in particular domain, right? So you can, it's easier to align your preferences and strengths into a product company because you will have a more determined, more, you will be able to predict your path more better, right? So what's the disadvantage? You can be tied to a technology which is, in a product company, there are not too many technology choices because you're just working on one. Depends, again, it's very subjective. No too many domain choices, right? You can't really move around at will, okay? And you're only working on one product at a time. So this is a high level idea about a product company. I'm fairly sure you should read up more about it. The other thing is a services company, which is what a company like Coditas is. I prefer to use a different term. I don't like to call it a services company. I like to call it a products company because with an S. While a product company is typically building one product, we at Coditas are building 300 products. Okay, and that will tell you why I prefer a services company. And again, please remember, it's my preference based on my background and based on my bias. A services company is preferable to me because there's a variety of technology choices you have, right? Over here, we are working on half the technologies under the sun because we choose what is the technology which is right for there's a variety of problems you're working with. For example, today, as we speak, I'm building a software which will manage horses in a barn. Okay, घोड़े manage करने के software बना रहे हम. And at the same time, we are building a software which can predict whether you'll get cancer based on your DNA, right? Two ends of the spectrum, right? We are working on software which is in fintech, which is in edtech, education technology. So there's a good variety of software domains, good variety of technologies, and that's what I love that. Okay, so that's a high level difference. Of course, typically most product companies traditionally usually have better budget, so highly likely to get a better salary in a product company, not necessarily than a services company. There are services companies which pay more. In a lot of cases, we hire from product companies, and us being able to hire from product companies means that we are able to pay better salaries. But all this is subjective, right? So, in my personal opinion, this is just a difference which you need to know. My personal background is that I spent a couple of years, first 2 3 jobs in a product company, then in a services company, and I'm running a service company. So I have some background around this. Then another way of classifying companies is big company and small company. Again, the definition is not very, you can't draw a line somewhere saying this is a big company, this is a small company. But again, the fundamental difference is when you're thinking from a career perspective. In a big company, you and the management are multiple layers away. That's a different way of thinking about it, right? You and the decision making is multiple layers away. So for you to grow, you have to go to multiple steps. For you to talk to decision makers, you have to go to multiple steps. In a big company, because there's a processes, there are well-defined functions, there are multiple departments, right? To the extent that I have seen large software companies whereby if you're building an application, you are responsible only for the Angular part or the front end part. And if you need an update in a table, you have to literally put in a ticket to say, okay, I need this table created, and then it'll take around 3 4 days for that to be available to you. Okay, I'm just giving you what, like with big companies, you'll have theoretically bureaucracy, you'll have processes, you'll have lesser ownership, lesser responsibility. It sounds all negative. That's why I said know my background. I've never been in a large company, and I'm not. I don't prefer. In fact, I'll give you my preference later. Advantage of a big company: typically they will have a very strong learning and development team. They will have dedicated training programs. They will have processes which are good to learn, right? So I learned that late. The largest company I worked on is Coditas. I never worked in a company which had processes, so I never had appreciation for processes. But in a big company, you learn. Okay, a big company, you may get more exposure. Again, that's subjective, right? Small company, the limited set of resources, limited teams, limited functionality, limited departments. So you generally would have access to decision makers, clients, responsibilities, role fasters, and a lot more, right? Again, my bias towards small companies is coming towards you because of my background, right? And that is why I'm trying to say that take it from me. It's my preference based on what I'm. So, if someone asks me what is an advisable, generally, I always would advise to stick to a small company because you were able to perform better, your merit will be seen. So in a large company, where there are 100,000 employees, no matter how well you perform, you'll have to go from the levels to rise up. In a company like Coditas, we have people who within the first 2 years have become tech leads, right? Based on their merit. In a large company, it's next to impossible. In a small company, people can walk into my door, get inputs from me, right? You're the CEO, the CTO, the tech leadership is accessible, and that helps a lot, and that's what I'm coming to as my next point, right? In a small company, you will typically own a lot more, and again, this is some thumb rules I use, right? And this is based on our experience. When we interview candidates from a large company, who spent 5 years in a large company, and we equate to someone in a Coditas, we realize that someone in Coditas who's been with us for 2 years will have written more lines of code, more applications, more exposures to technology than someone who spent 5 years in a larger organization. And it's nothing to do with the individual person's talent. It's because of which company they are in. It's because of which organization they were in, the structure they were in, right? So this is my preference. If I were to start my career again, I'll still stick to a small company, right? But remember, right, a lot of you would have preferences to go to Amazon, to Facebook, to Microsoft, to Google. They are all now large companies. So, and some of this may not be very relevant in certain situations, certain organizations, right? So there's no right and wrong. Please take all the inputs with a I think one of the most important points within this point is not that the company is important. I would rather choose to work under a mentor or a lead who is more relevant to me, right? No one can shape a career better than your immediate mentor or lead. If you can get that, if you can get to work in a small company with a very strict tech founder, CTO, and a very small setup, that's probably one of the best options, right? Of course, money and all that is there. I've seen that. I've seen people, you might get a very well-known CTO starting up right now. And because he's starting up, he has a small team. Otherwise, he's very accomplished. You get to be part of his team or her team, right? Typically, a very good move. Typically, you'll get a lot to learn. The best learnings are from some of this great experience. So, personally, the mentorship and leadership I got at Gemstone was something very valuable for me, and something I cannot undermine. So, the mentorship and leadership, a lot of team members at Coditas get from the leads over here. So, everyone in Coditas is a hands-on coder, including me. I don't code it as much, but if you ask me what is our USP, when a candidate talks to me, he has an offer from, I don't want to name companies here, but I talk about this, that, you will work with some of the industry leaders and you'll have direct access to them, right? There'll not be three layers above you. There'll not be people you see in a cafeteria sitting in the corner. They'll be with you in the same room talking to you. You can walk in and talk to them. You can get inputs from them. Their 15, 20 years of experience can be given, knowledge can be passed on to you. So I personally would, if at all you have a choice, if you know who's going to be a mentor lead, if those things are known, give a good weightage to that. It makes a big difference. There's this quote which say people don't choose companies, they choose bosses. It's largely true. It's, you can be a bad company with a great lead, it'll be great. You can be in a good company with a bad lead, it won't work. So more important than companies is the mentor or lead. I cannot undermine that point. Now, moving away from the large areas of technology and company, I would come to some finer aspects on what is important as you progress in your career, right? And this is something I keep on talking about, your communication skills, right? A lot of us who are in the technology field typically do not give so much weightage and importance to this. And now what happens as a result is that you are not able to, communication is not about necessarily about, your certain skills. It's an amalgamation of multiple skills, right? And when you're working, you need to be able to communicate your ideas. You need to be able to absorb ideas, and that is when you will be able to move and progress. So make sure that you are focusing on this always throughout. Okay, if you are learning and developing your tech skills, make sure you're developing your communication skills as well. I'm highlighting this as a separate slide, as a separate point, because this is one of the larger reasons why people do not have successful careers. I cannot undermine this point. I've been talking about this. I've been seeing examples of this day in, day out. So here's an example I always give. Take a person with excellent technical skills, but average communication skills. And take the opposite person with excellent communication skills and average technical skills. Guess who will be perceived to be better in the industry? The person with excellent communication. It's unfortunate. I hate that personally, but that's the fact of the matter. What is better than the two? Someone with excellent communication skills and someone with excellent technical skills, right? So make sure you, along your tech career, when you're updating yourself, you're making sure that communication is being paid attention to. Now, the next point which I'm going to talk about, slightly controversial, but I want to put it out, right? Before I preface this, I do not want to say at all anything about a merit of a language. In fact, if now I'm coming to English in particular, I don't want to endorse English as a better language. Okay, in fact, it is not. I don't want to say you should not learn your regional language or your national language or something like that. I am not saying yes or no to any of that. What I'm saying is a fact of the matter is that English in today's world is very important. Okay, I keep on hearing, I keep on getting into debates around this, and the debate is not around my culture. It's not around colonization. It's not about Macaulay, whatever you want to call it, right? Practical world says if your English communication is good, you'll be able to access a lot more information on the world wide web or around the globe and be able to communicate more freely and rise up the corporate ladder. It's a fact. You will, I made a post on LinkedIn around this, that you will get outliers. Every time I spoke about someone will say, hey, here's this good person, he doesn't, but he's succeeded. For every one example of person who succeeded, I'll give you 100 who did not succeed. Okay, this is something I am strongly believing upon, and I want to make sure. The problem with this point is that a lot of people bring in the political or the cultural angle and talk about it. I'm saying separate the two. Do not look at English as a culture or as a foreign language. English is yours finally, right? At the end of the day, right now, India is one of the largest English-speaking populations in the world. Right? Languages develop, evolve. There was no language which was inherently of a particular area, or it has migrated. Right? So let's adopt English as ours. That said, now pay attention to it. Try to improve upon it. I have so many people who did their schooling in the local languages. They did the Marathi medium schooling, but they're excellent English speakers and they're doing really well now. Okay, I didn't give the example as a discrimination. I have examples who did not do that and who did not do well, and I have a lot more examples there. And I feel bad about it. They are excellent in tech, and they're excellent communicators. They'll communicate very well in the local languages. So as long as the problem with the local languages is that the entire ecosystem has to be in the local language. Whereas there is now a far larger ecosystem in English. So this is a matter of choice, preference, but improve if not, right? A lot of you will already have great English communication skills, but this is the fact. This is the reality. Better you accept it is my input over here. Right. And soft skills in general, right? Your presentation skills, right? Your whatever other skills. So if you look at, again, this is the one thing I wanted to start about when I spoke about when I started the webinar was, the first part, success. Success is also subjective. A lot of people will choose to determine what success is for them, right? Some people, for them, success is happiness, which is probably the most right way of looking at it. But people at the end of the day want to rise up the corporate ladder. People want to be known. Fame is a criteria, money is a criteria, and it is fair. I don't want to get into judgment of what is success and what is not success. But in general, the traditionally understood path of success means rising up the corporate ladder, having leadership position, better designations, better roles, better numbers in salary. For all that, going up, overall soft skills, right? When I say soft skills, it includes communication, presentation, leadership, team building. All those skills are very important, right? The foundation lies in technical, then communication, but then all other soft skills come into picture, right? Your writing skills, the way you are able to work in a team. A lot of things keep on adding up to your career path. So make sure you're paying attention to that. And this is one point I wanted to talk about also, is discipline, right? And this is something I have seen personally, which has affected a lot of career paths. And discipline is something which can be termed in multiple ways, and the discipline is required in multiple areas, including you. And I'll choose one of the areas within discipline, but it's a larger topic. Discipline in time, for example. Right? Anyone who works with me knows that I am very, very particular about starting things on time, ending things on time, because time is something which everyone has equal, right? 1 minute of mine is Mukesh Ambani's 1 minute, same minute. Unless he's bought it by paying me a salary or by buying my service, he doesn't own it. He cannot ask me to wait unless I want to wait. for example, right? And a lot of successful people have achieved success because they have been disciplined about it. They're respected because of their time, right? I have a lot of people, I can go on record and saying that, and if I'm conducting an interview and the person is late, and is late because he's casual about it, I will reject. He can be late because he got into an accident, and I'll accept. A lot of people are late. They walk in, they're not even apologetic. They don't even reason. For me, that is not something acceptable. Okay, that's something and okay, this is debatable. A lot of people will talk about it. I give benefit of doubt. I'll wait for the explanation. But why am I talking this to you guys today? I'm assuming there's a larger, younger generation here. It's becoming a large problem, right? Punctuality, being on time, the casuality around overall discipline. And this discipline then now translates into other things. The discipline around sticking to a particular time on your social media, not moving to a particular, focusing on your work for a given time. These things are important. College life was great. A lot of us were no discipline. A lot of I bunked classes. I went late into classes. That was fine. Okay, and that did affect me in that time in different ways. But right now, if you want to take it as an advice, people who are disciplined will have a greater chance of success. I've seen some of the most successful people in my terminology, in my definitions, who are extremely difficult, extremely disciplined. I recently wrote a post on Anand Deshpande, who's the founder of Persistent on LinkedIn. Go read it. I had a meeting fixed with him 3 months later on a Saturday at 11:30 a.m. A calendar request came to me for a meeting 3 months from today on a Saturday at 11:30 a.m. I was waiting outside his cabin. 11:29, he walked out and took me in. This is the top tech entrepreneur in Pune, and I was starting Coditas at that time. He valued my time, he valued his time. This point I cannot undermine. I respect people who are disciplined, and they get the respect back. In fact, most of the people who are successful in the industry, especially in our industry, are very disciplined. You might hear about people in the entertainment world who get respect by being late. That's bullshit. Okay, I've met some of them. I lost my respect for them. So please, if you want to take one point from me, additional point from me, be disciplined. It'll help you more than anyone else. It'll help people respect you more. You will respect yourself more by disciplining in various areas. I use a single word over here. It is a very large word. It has a lot of areas, but take it as an advice that it does help. Yeah, great. So I actually don't know how much time I took today, but I was focused on. I am now wrapping up this presentation. But before I wrap up, what I wanted to talk about is there are tons and tons of resources available around what you want to know. Okay, and Google is the answer. Trust me. If you go and type in a question, go read about it. Read, talk. Your career is your life. Some of the decisions you're going to make are going to affect you for the next 20, 30 years. Do research, understand them well, have all the information. I put this here because I'm like Shivani at the beginning asked that you can put questions on the chat box and I'll be answering them. If you ask me for resources, I'll give you this answer in Google. There's no better resource today because everything can be there. Okay, if you're concerned about privacy, DuckDuckGo, or whatever things you consider, right? So Google is just for a verb or noun we use nowadays for search engines. Great. We can go into questions, and before we go into questions, for questions like people who joined late, you can type the questions in the chat box. Our team is monitoring the questions. I will not. They'll pick some questions, and I'm not sure how many questions are there right now, and they'll ask me. And one thing which I wanted to let everyone know is that we are also hiring at Coditas. We have very, very many openings. We are in a growth path. So our website careers.coditas.com has most of the details. If not, you can ask the question. Or at least you use the website or to send us the questions around it. And we have multiple openings in multiple areas. If you do not find a relevant opening which matches, you just there's an option to do that as well. So we'll be more than happy to get your resume. We do receive a very large volume of applications, so we may not necessarily respond to all of them, but those which match criterias and those which work well, we will try to engage in. Hopefully, some of you who are part of this will have a successful career in Coditas. I want you to succeed. I want us to succeed. We grow together as well. So thank you very much, everyone. Shivani, over to you. We can now have the questions.
Thank you, Mitul, for the wonderful insights. I'm sure our participants
And
must have.
I'm on time. Huh? Look at my discipline.
Absolutely. Sharp too. Okay, so to address some questions, I think we'll have to extend our session by 15 minutes
Yeah.
as
So that's all. I'm available, and we can take as many questions.
great. Okay, so let's move on to our first question, which is by Kushal Shimpi. The question is, as a recruiter, what do you see or want in a candidate?
As a recruiter, what do I see and want in a candidate? So that's an excellent question, actually, right? And part of my webinar covered a lot of it. It very first thing, it depends on the role we are hiring for, right? I always prefer to match the role first, right, in terms of experience and everything. But I'll step back a bit. Okay, there is a better answer I have for this, and I'll give you. So if you want to take it very simply, first, that in an order of preference, in a very generic way, we look at three things which I always talk about. Number one is attitude. Number two is aptitude. Number three is skill. Okay, all three are important, and I'll explain. Attitude is the best way I can explain is kar sakta hai attitude. I can do it, kind of an attitude. Very, very difficult for us to judge, but we try to get that. I try to get that in my interviews. I try to talk to people about how they've been in situations, and I try to gauge that. Very difficult for to be in. Aptitude is your overall ability for coding. I like to do the logical, analytical kind of questions. Skill is the actual technology skill, Java. I'm talking about technical hiring, coding hiring right now in particular. So in order of preference, right? So I give a higher weightage to attitude, the highest weightage to attitude. Very difficult to join an interview. So when I'm talking to you as a recruiter, very difficult to judge. But a lot of my hires also happen through reference. So if one good technical person tells me this guy has an excellent attitude, I'll most likely hire you, even if I have to train you. Okay. Aptitude is something which we can largely test. We can give some questions around our aptitude. So yeah, aptitude is great. And third is skill. That said, we also like to now skill is also important, of course, and the skills importance depends on the experience level because we are paying for the skill as well, right? So if you're taking a 5 years Java experienced person, I expect you to have built that skills of 5 years because you will be more expensive for us because I'm paying for the 5 years as well, as opposed to a fresher, for example, right? So I'm going to look at that. What am I not going to look at? I'm not going to look at the way you walked into my cabin. I'm not going to look at the way you held your hands. Trust me, okay? That's the one thing I want to talk about today, which I didn't get a chance to talk about. You'll go to a lot of videos which talk about how you should behave in an interview, how you should present. Maybe some people do that. For me, that again, it's great. It's good to have that. In fact, it's good to go through that because it at least improves your self-confidence. But I will not reject someone because they didn't greet me or they didn't. Those are minor things. You do it because it'll help. It'll improve your self-confidence while walking into an interview or a discussion. But those are very small things. That is not important to me. Okay. What is more important is the overall, right? So, and this is not me, right? And a lot of tech folks will never consider that as important, right? You folding your hands in the right way, you looking down, you looking up, your eyes not, again, makes a difference, does improve your chances, but it will not be a make or break, right? Largely. What will be make or break is if the team member can gauge your attitude, great. Aptitude, easy to gauge. And of course, skills. Skills is something which is easiest for us to test. And the other thing we also do is one more additional point, a long answer. We also try to match the role. So sometimes you may be overqualified and we may not take you because of that, because then you will not enjoy here. I want to make sure that once you come, we have challenging work for you. Okay, you might be doing already some really good work. You might be looking for, good meaning for your role, right? We might not have that kind of level of work which you are looking for. and because it's not always a choice. So we sometimes don't hire because you might be looking for something different. So it has to be a match of both passion, preference, skill, aptitude, attitude. Yeah. I hope I answered that correctly. Shivani?
Okay, yeah, great. Kushal, I hope that has answered your question. Next, we have three questions from Ashwin. I will break it down. So, the first part is, what are your success habits?
What are my success habits?
Yeah.
I think I covered one: discipline, timings. I've rarely been late in any event, whether I'm interviewing a fresher or meeting a CEO of a company. I always take into time, traffic, parking. I reach early, always generally reach early. I keep windows, and this is something I like doing, right? And I won't call it a success habit. I call it a habit. Right? It makes me happy. It makes me comfortable. I feel guilty if I'm late, right? Reading. So I do a lot of breath reading. I do a lot of internet reading. I don't read books, and it's not a advice that you should not read books. I don't read books. Is though I read one or two recently, and yeah, keeping myself updated, right? And another thing which I do a lot is talk to a lot of people. I generally like interacting with a lot of people, especially on topics which I want to explore. I think the webinar mentioned, right? Read, talk, discipline. So, and being very good at what you do. So, and I think the other part is being very whatever you do it in the right way, right? Be happy about what you build. Shivani, being from the marketing team, sometimes get the brunt of it because, and we want whatever creative is being done to be perfect, right? We want to put it out there, anything. When we created our logo, anything, right? We want to pay attention to it. We want something to go out when it is good. When we're building software, I want to be proud of it. And I want to just earn money. I want to feel good about it from my inner self. Right? There are multiple goals I achieve by doing it. So yeah, long answer. Hope I
Yeah.
answered.
Yeah. Okay. So, next, it is by Ashwin. How do you push through your worst times?
Ah, I've been very lucky. I haven't had many worst, very bad things, but a couple of times, and again, one point is that I'll do some self promotion here. So I write about a lot of these things on LinkedIn. Okay, so whoever's not following me on LinkedIn, try to follow and go and read of this. I've spoken about a couple of incidents. So in my career path, I didn't mention, but at a certain point, I was laid off, and I was laid off because the company was not doing well at that point of time. And maybe, frankly speaking, why it has not affected me much, because I have a very good support system around me. Okay, my parents and my family, my wife, they have always been supportive, and I haven't ever felt the pressure, at least in career. In college, IIT. So the background is, since I was a foreign student, I came into IIT. First year was hell for me. I have literally cried. From being a topper in school to being the bottom of the class, chances of failure. There too, what helped me was my friends, my batchmates. So maybe the answer lies there. The answer lies in having people around you who really value you. You go talk to them, be around them, they will push you up, right? So keeping the right company who are there for you in the right times. As I said, I'm luckily not been, I can't really say I've struggled. I've had some small incidents, but the support around me has been immense, and I don't think so I can undermine that. So very thankful for that.
Okay, great. So, the last part of Ashwin's question is, when did you consider yourself a success?
Now, that's a very subjective question, Ashwin, and there's no right answer to it. But at different stages in life, you will have different success criteria, and it will keep on evolving. So when I was in college, I thought if I'll earn a couple of crores, I'll retire. I did it long time ago, and I'm not retired, and I'm not using my crores. I used to drive a Honda City 7 years ago before I started Coditas. Guess what? I'm still driving the same Honda City. I'm still staying in the same house. I'm still wearing the 200 rupee t-shirt which I used to wear. Okay, so I don't think so. I would have thought differently when I was there. Success criteria is very personal. And I mentioned this during the webinar as well. So some people will have money as a success. Nothing wrong with that. I want to emphasize that at a certain point of time, if you go and you may evolve and you may change that. So it will keep on evolving as like we started reaching, a lot of, I have discussion with my batchmate. You talk about the Maslow's pyramid, where you grow up. So as you going up the ladder, your criteria changes. One thing I can say definitely, which is unarguable, happiness is the goal for everyone. So whatever you do, right, finally it should result in happiness. Whether you earn money, it results in happiness. You earn fame, it results in happiness. You write good code, it results in happiness. It should achieve your happiness at your unit individual level, right? Simple answer to that is that success means happiness. If you're happy, you're successful.
Very, very rightly said. Okay, so the next question is from Pratik Gaikwad. Pratik says, are you hiring freshers currently?
Yes, we are hiring freshers, quite a few, and so you can apply through the career site right now, and we are also going to campuses, and there's a separate program which is running. So be watching our so one of the things you should do, all of you, is that if you want updates on Coditas, please follow our social media channels. So whenever we are coming to your campus or we have openings, it's generally always published on our channels, and you should get that update. So if those of you who've already started a career and want to explore, options are there when we are hiring for a particular role. We'll always keep on talking about it. Our career pages is also being updated as we speak, right? It might not always have the information, but visit that and follow our social media channels. Google, just search Coditas on any of the platform. We are generally there in most of them. So we are active on LinkedIn, Insta, Facebook, YouTube. Right now, the channel you are on, go. We don't publicize much there, but you can now subscribe and you can get some future updates there. And yeah, so that is one way of knowing. But to answer your question, the short answer is yes, we are hiring, and we intend to. So just to give you an idea, last year, just before lockdown, we had gotten a good. We had given offers to a lot of fresh grads, and because of lockdown, although we could not onboard them, we didn't deny. We trained everyone remotely for the last 9 to 10 months, and they started onboarding right now. So we feel we are responsible for everyone's career here. We want to make sure everyone's successful. So as a business, I want to make sure that once you are part of Coditas, you are part of our family. Your success is our responsibility, and we want to make sure. And freshers are a much larger responsibility, right? Because they need a lot of guidance and training. We were not doing campus placements earlier because I didn't have the infrastructure. We didn't have the setup. We started major campus placement last year. Then this year we want to expand it. So short answer, yes.
Well, okay, next, Yash wants to know, is full stack beneficial rather than going for single technologies?
Simple answer, yes, definitely. I'll not, again, it's always subjective in multiple, but full stack is basically, saying that you can build an end-to-end application yourself, right? End-to-end application which can be used by real users yourself. So it's always beneficial. You are more of a generalist. You are more theoretical job opportunities. So the answer is yes right now, as of today, right? That does not mean people who are specialized in one have a lesser chance or are not. But tied to your preferences, strengths, weaknesses, and all that, right? So and all that, look at it in totality. But individually, if you ask me, all things equal, full stack versus single, I'll say full stack. Yeah, today, as of today.
Okay, full stack. Yeah. Next, we have question from Varun. Should a fresher prefer a startup or MNC as his or her first company?
So I answered that in the webinar, Varun, and it'll have to depend on multiple factors, right? And you have to look at everything always in your context, right? What is which startup, what role, which location, which technology, right? And a lot of those things, it's not only the startup, right? So based on a lot of that and use a lot of that, because I don't want to give you a single answer, right? The single answer would, if again, being all things being equal, I would say startup. but please don't take that as an answer. Don't take it as the right or wrong answer right now, because you'll have to put it in your context. And then, so I'll not want to answer this without you doing the research on it, right? So you'll have to read up more on it. There's no simple answer to this, because I don't want to give an answer to someone who will end up joining a startup and then without doing the right research. Uh, right? There's a lot more factors, right? Lot more factors. The different kind of, so you need to understand what both will entail in much more depth. You require more reading and more knowledge on what is going to happen. And startup and MNC are two different. Again, you can be a startup and an MNC. Okay, MNC means multinational company. A lot of startups are multinational companies today. Okay, for example, I don't know if you can still consider the likes of Facebook as startups anymore, but once you go across borders and you start becoming a certain size, you stop being a startup, probably, right? So, and one thing I can say you should avoid is clearly avoid joining a startup where you don't have mentors or leads to guide you, because startup what will end up happening is that maybe you are the only, you might join a very small startup where you are the only backend developer. So you are fresh out of college, you've joined a startup, there's no one to lead and mentor you, you are not growing, not something I'll advise. If you're joining a startup, look who's already there. There has to be some really solid people over there who will guide and mentor you. In the early stages of your career, look for leadership, mentorship, learning, right? More than the company. I mentioned that in the webinar. Maybe it was not very clear, but more than the company, the mentor matters to you. The leadership should matter more to you.
Right. Okay, so let's take up next question from Ezio. As a fresher, should I do competitive coding or learn frameworks related to language? What will fetch me more job opportunities? Competitive coding or learn
I
framework
understood,
related
yeah,
to language?
got the question very well. And so I'll tell you the answer lies in kind of, and I understand there are two different things, and you're right about it. Now it depends on whom you're looking for. So, for example, uh, if you're applying to Coditas, we'll probably prefer more of frameworks. But if you're applying to some other companies, um, they might prefer that because some people are looking more for the DS and algo skills more than the clean coding skills or more than skills, right? So no, again, it is I'll keep on repeating this over and over because I don't want to give a wrong advice. This is a very important advice I think I'm giving right now. You should always put it in context, read and write, and about the company you're targeting, your own strengths, right? Your own preferences. Like if you want to do front end development, go please read frameworks. Competitive programming is not going to help in front end development. And there's nothing wrong in being a front end developer. In fact, I know of a lot of job roles on front end developer having better salaries, if salaries, than hardcore backend developers. Again, here's a small stat. A lot of C++ development developers are earning much less than Angular React developers today, and that is the situation today. Don't take it as a input for your career, but people are building drivers of operating systems which involve theoretically much higher knowledge of computer science. And then people are building Angular front ends, which in my opinion, you don't need a lot of computer science knowledge, but the Angular developer is earning much more than the C++ developer of a similar. Don't take this as an example, which you say, okay, I don't want to do C++ development. I just am aware of such an institution. It can happen either way. So to answer your, both are good. We also have in the past considered competitive programmers, but I wouldn't pick one other. It will depend on the role I'm hiring for. It will depend on what I'm hiring for. So, and that will be similar to other companies as well. Some companies might require this. So, both are important, and it depends on what you are targeting.
Okay. All right. So next we will take up Sunil Vishwakarma's question. Does relevant education and background affect hiring at Coditas, or projects in portfolio will dominate all other clauses for someone to work at Coditas?
Yeah, at Coditas, definitely portfolio. Okay, we've gone on record. We don't care about degrees. We don't care about education background. We care about who you are and what your skills are very, very clearly. Okay. And there's a reason for that, is because we understand coding very well. We will be able to evaluate you very well. Okay, so again, I don't want to say that your degrees in are not important, but because we know what we want, and for us the work is more important. I mean, your knowledge is more important. Now, your degree is not your knowledge. You are your knowledge. Your knowledge is your knowledge. So we will evaluate you. Okay, you can't just show us your portfolio and say, okay, this is my portfolio. Can I come? Of course, we will use it as a filter criteria, and then you go through the process, and the process will determine that. We will not filter you out because you don't have a degree or you don't have a strong degree or whatever. Yeah, so the answer is portfolio for sure.
Okay, great. So let's take up one final question. It is from Saurabh Chopade. Saurabh wants to know, can anybody code? I think a good close-up question.
I think so. I am very confident about, because one thing sort of is that coding is a very very vast field, right? And what you call coding is it's to me the question is like, can anyone do math? And that's what I strongly believe in, right? And in fact, it's much easier. Right? Coding is easy. You don't need a computer science degree for it. You can be successful coder without any computer science knowledge. A BCom can become a good coder. Now, what kind of coding is depends, right? So you can, like I said, some building some platforms where you require good knowledge of algos, or how much time it'll take and all that may be different. You may need certain knowledge, certain areas, but general coding as coding, no, you don't need any background, any experience. Anyone can become a coder as long as they want to be a coder. Um, and yeah, in fact, can become any type of coder, right? You want to become a backend developer, the degree does not matter. You can learn everything online for free. Okay, you don't need to pay to learn. The best resources are available. So when I posted this on social media, that I'll be taking this webinar, one person asked me to address this particularly, that please inform everyone that you do not have to pay for learning coding. And I'm taking the, and I agree with them. And I want to let everyone know that some of the best resources for learning coding are free, 100% free. And it doesn't mean that if you pay you'll get that. And if you're a parent, please take note of that as well. I don't want to take names of companies here, but the message out there is that coding can be done by anyone. By the way, on the same debate, I don't think children should not learn coding. That is not the point. As I said, it's like math. It's one of the skills, right? It's not necessary you do it, but it's good to do it, and you can do it, and anyone can do it. So I don't see a background or like, to answer your question. Yes, anyone can code if they want to.
Okay, perfect. So I think we have covered all our questions. Mitul, is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
No, no, no. Thank you very much, everyone, for taking your time to be part of this. We will be doing more. The goal of this is we want people to be successful, to write clean code, and be happy in their careers. We want, assuming most of you are from India, as India, we want to improve the code quality standards in India. I want the happiness index of us as coders to improve by improving the quality of the code we write. And I want all of us to be proud of our work that we are doing right now. Everyone can be successful, and this is not a lose and gain world. In fact, everyone can. For you to be successful doesn't known as to fail. Everyone can be successful, and we can do that together, right? And that's the beauty about this field. And as I mentioned here, is one of the fields where you hold the power. It is merit based. So this is something I didn't speak about explicitly, but this is one of the few industries where merit matters. And you will not. Okay, you may in an instance in a particular area field, okay, you are discriminated or something happened, but in the larger industry, if you are good, you are done things right, you will shine. Okay, it is your merit, your hard work, your determination which will take you forward. You determine your career. That's the best part about this industry. You don't have to have a godfather here. You don't have to have a background. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have any infrastructure. You can be from wherever in the world, from whatever economic background, from whatever language, whatever race, and become the top programmer coder in the world without any restrictions. Who determines that? You. Right? And that's the best part of this industry. You should be proud of the industry, and you should be proud of, and you can do it. That's what I would say.
Perfect. Great piece of advice, Mitul. Thank you. And thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. You must have also received a link to the feedback form in the chat window. Please help us understand how this session was for you by submitting your answers. Lastly, keep your inboxes refreshed and our channel subscribed to get any further updates from Coditas. And thank you again for joining us today. We will see you next time. Take care. Bye
Thank you.
bye.
Hi, thanks, Shivani. Hi. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.